What's up? It's Mr. A. We're here to work through Remastery MD2 for line plots. All right, before we really dive into the actual line plots, we need to actually look at the operations of fractions first. So a couple of things here. If we have, let's say we have 1/8, we have 2/4, we have 3/4, and we have, let's say 2/8. And you need to make a line plot. Well, in order to make the line plot, we need to put them in order from least to greatest. And in order to do that, we truly need to make equivalent fractions. Well, I'm looking at 8 and 4, and it looks like they're all going to go to eighths. So what I need to do is take my 2/4 and my 3/4 and turn those into eighths. Well, in order to make equivalent fractions, I need to multiply by the same number on the top as I do by the bottom. So 4 times 2 is 8, so therefore I need to multiply 3 times 2, which is 6. And then I need to do 4 times 2, which is 8, and 2 times 2, which is 4. So on this line plot, I would have 1/8, I would then have 2/8, I would then need 2/4, and then I would have 3/4 right there. So in order to make those line plots, we actually need to make sure that all have the same denominator and make equivalent fractions. Let's say then that I know how to make equivalent fractions, but now it's asking me to find a total or find a difference. So let's say if I'm looking at this line plot, I want to find the total of the 3 smallest frequencies. Well, if I look here, there's no frequencies above 1 1/4, so I might as well cross that one out because I know that I'm not going to use it. There's no frequencies here. So the 3 smallest would be these two and this one right here all together. So if I take 1 1/8 plus 1 1/8, I would get a total of 2 2/8. Another way I could do that is take 1 1/8 and turn it into an improper fraction, which would be a total of 9/8. And I could multiply that by 2/1, right? Because I have 2 of the 9/8. Well, that would be 18/8, which is equal to 2 2/8. I get the same thing. Then I need to add in my 1 3/8. So I'm going to add 1 3/8. I'm going to get a total of 3 5/8. So remember, when we add fractions, we can turn them into improper fractions. We need to make sure denominators are the same, and then we always check to see if it can simplify at the end. So our whole numbers are 3, my fractions are 5/8. The total sum of the 3 smallest values on this one would be 3 5/8. Lastly, you needed to be able to divide fractions in case you needed to redistribute or find the average. Let's say that we wanted to find the average of the 3 largest measurements. Well, I see 1, 2, and 3. So in order to find the average, I first need to add, and then I'm going to divide. Okay, so let's find our total sum of these 3. Well, I know that 1 1/2 plus 1 1/2 is equivalent to 2 2/2, or 3. And then I add my 2, and I get 5. Well, now that I have 5, I need to divide that by how many total frequencies there are. Well, I see 3. Well, to divide fractions, we have to remember that we need to keep our first fraction the same, so we're going to keep 5/1. The opposite of division is multiplication, and if we do the opposite of the operation, we need to flip this one. So we call it keep, change, and flip, just like so. I'm going to get 5/3, and that simplifies to 1 2/3, which makes sense. My average of 1 2/3 would be between 1 1/2 and 2, so I know that my answer is reasonable. So equivalent fractions, adding fractions, dividing fractions, all of those skills were needed in order to be successful in this mastery. Now let's take a look at one of the masteries. Now let's go ahead and take a look at one of the most missed questions on the previous mastery. We can see here of 2 incorrect answers, they needed to make a line plot and put them in order from least to greatest, as well as putting the correct number of frequencies. This was an all or nothing question, so let's develop some strategies in order to make an accurate line plot. Well, first, I notice that I have 7 spaces that I need to fill. And if I look at my choices, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 choices, but I'm only going to use 7 of them. So that means 2 of them I don't need. Well, let's look at the whole numbers first, because those kind of stick out. I don't see a 3 by itself, and I don't see a 4 by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and cross those out, thinking that I probably won't use them. I might, but I'm just going to think that I won't. So now, looking at these values, the smallest one possible looks to be 3 1/8. So I'm going to go ahead and start my line plot with 3 1/8. So it looks like there's fourths, eighths, and halves. And I'm just going to assume everything to be eighths and make some equivalent fractions. I don't see a 3 2/8 down here, but I know that 1/4 times 2/2 would equal 2/8. So I know that this is going to be my second fraction, 3 1/4. So I'm gonna got that one. And now I'm looking for 3 3/8, which bada bing, bada boom, right there, 3 3/8. And then I'm going to look for 3 4/8, but I don't see it, but I know that 4 is half of 8, so I know that 3 1/2 is equivalent to 3 4/8. Now I need 3 5/8. Again, I don't see a 3 6/8, but I know that 6/8 simplifies to 3 3/4. And then my last one obviously then has to be 3 7/8, just like so. So now that I've used all of them, I was right. I didn't need the 3 or the 4. They were there to try to throw me off. Because if I put the 3 in, I was going to have to skip a number down here. And if I put the 4 in, I was going to have to skip a number down here. So it's very important to think about which ones do you not need. Well, now all I need to do is just look at my data and plot some frequencies. So I know that I have a 3 5/8. And I'm just going to X them out every time that I use them. That way I know that I'm done with it. 3 7/8. And then I have a 3 3/4. And then I have a 3 1/8. I have another 3 1/8. I have a 3 1/2. I have a 3 1/8. I have 3 1/4. I have 3 1/2. And I have 3 3/4. It's always a good strategy, first of all, to cross them all out, but double count all of your frequencies. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got all my frequencies on there. I've got 3 of the 1/8. I've got 1 of the 4th. I've got 2 of the halves, 1 5/8, 2 3/4, and a 7/8. So when you make your line plot, first of all, look to see which numbers you need. Make sure that you put them in order from least to greatest, making equivalent fractions, and then double count all of your frequencies. All right, show me what you've got on this little check here, and then see if you're ready for the readiness quiz. I believe in you.